Today's video, I'm going to be talking about the best metal albums from December. This is week number 2, and I know we're in the middle of December and everybody's doing their end of the year list, but there were some pretty good stuff that came out this weekend. Bands are more underground, I guess you can call them. I haven't heard of any of these bands, but I heard some pretty good stuff, so I'm going to keep the series going for maybe like the next week or so, and then I'll continue it in 2023 when albums start being released again. As always, I divided this into chapters. Feel free to jump to the band you want to hear about. So let me get into it. The first band is called Souldrainer, and the album is called Departure. They are a band from Sweden. They've been active since 1999. They have 4 full-length albums, and they play melodic death metal released on Black Lion Records. And it's melodic death metal. You know, the guitars are distorted. Overall tone of the songs are kind of dark, the vocals are aggressive, but you understand the lyrics, so you can listen along. And the guitars have a nice crunch to them, and they use some atmospheric elements, kind of give it a full sound. They do some of that like tremolo picking at times, and they change tempos. The sound is very good. I think it's a good album to listen to with headphones. They do some like interesting stuff. I hear a lot of influence from like the band Death, that old school death metal. Tempos are not always fast. Most of the songs move at a nice pace, so you kind of appreciate the melodies. They know when to be slow, they know when to be fast. So I chose 2 songs. First one, Rats of the International Race. I like the song because you can hear the bass guitar along with the distorted guitars in the intro. The song has an atmosphere and melody, and at the same time, it's very heavy. This song reminds me of like a band like Amorphis. The rhythm is carried with a steady drum beat. The band likes to use lots of sustained power chords, and that helps the additional instruments come forward. You do hear some variation in the vocals at times during the song, and there's an interesting use of like feedback like towards the end of the song. The other song I chose was called Departure. It's a cool song. Now this one starts with like a sound clip. You hear this guy saying, I tried to scream, but my whole body was paralyzed. So they're talking about like an alien abduction. This song has like thick and heavy guitar riffs, and they use like more sound clips throughout the song. And I think it might even be like from like a real like account of an alien abduction. I don't know, but it's just lots of atmosphere in the song, and it's kind of a slower song, but I like the melody, so that was a good one. Now the next band is called Barabbas. They're from France. And the album, it's in French. It's called Mort, appelle, tous, vivants. And my translation is Death Calls All the Living. This is a doom and stoner metal band. The label is Sleeping Church Records. And it's kind of like closer to classic doom of the 80s. They're not like super slow. Songs move at a nice pace. They use keyboards, kind of create atmosphere. They have heavy, distorted guitar riffs. The lyrics of all the songs are in French. Vocals are clean, maybe similar to a band like Candlemass or Cathedral. They kind of make some interesting choices with the guitar playing. They use some different effects that kind of create some unique sounds. They use these droning type of guitar riffs. And the overall tone of the album is dark and haunting. Sometimes they use like isolated guitar parts, and other times they bring in the keyboard sounds to kind of create some more like haunting melodies. The album is 9 songs, about an hour long, so most of the songs are in like the 7 to 9 minute range. So the first song I chose was Les Saints Riff Redempteur, or the Holy Redeemer Riff. That's the translation I got. I like the song. It has a little more energy than some of the other songs. It moves a little faster, a little more power to it. It kind of changes up a bit. It's kind of good when you listen to the album in full. And the song has more of a classic metal feel, but it still remains in line with the overall tone of the album. The song is a cool guitar solo, has that wah-wah effect. There's part of the song where they incorporate like a slow galloping style in the guitar sound. Kind of gives it a heavier feel, and the slower parts really make the guitar stand out. And the second song I chose is Mon crâne est une crypte, et je suis un mur. And my translation is, my skull is a crypt and I'm confined in it. So I like the song. It starts with classical or almost folk music style. Has some soft arrangements, but they incorporate some melodic lead guitar playing, and it leads to some like droning, distorted guitars. The main guitar riff is like a heavy Black Sabbath style doom riff, and they accompany it with some interesting percussion, kind of makes it sound dark and sinister. Song has some heavy vocals and like a dark and eerie sound that kind of mixed with the instruments in. They also have like a slow melodic guitar riff with like the wah-wah effect. And this is one of the longest songs at almost 10 minutes, kind of filled with darkness and emotion. Next band is called Deathless Legacy. They are from Italy. The album is called Mater Lavaruum. They are heavy metal. I mean, that's the label on the Metal Archives. And they kind of like do a lot of stuff like horror movie themes. So I thought that was cool. And it's good. They remind me like of Ghost, that type of sound. It's classic metal, but with female vocals. They incorporate lots of like symphonic metal elements, and they kind of make the music sound like dark and sinister, but almost like that like church music kind of thing. But it's just darker. The guitars and keyboards kind of played along with each other, and the songs have both melody and memorability. There are parts of the songs with like isolated organ sounds, and like a chanting kind of evokes feeling of some type of like seance or ritual. Again, I'm going back to the band Ghost, maybe on their earlier albums where they have like that like dark like sound. And also guitar solos are pretty good on this album. First song I chose was called Fade Into the Dark. Starts with a piano intro, kind of sounds like from a horror movie, but then they go into more of like a power metal direction, I guess. They have these like stop-start guitar riffs and then the organ, so they work together in harmony very well. It's melodic, it's catchy, has a heavier drum beat, and at times the drums kind of like match the guitar riffs, like they're kind of like in unison. The song has some keyboard solo that can be compared to maybe like that old like Deep Purple type of sound or some prog metal. A little bit of like Dream Theater, but they're not really too like proggy. Next song I chose is Queen of the Infernal Pantheon. This is just straightforward heavy metal with some symphonic elements. The vocals are melodic. You got female vocals, you got some organ sounds, and more of like this horror movie theme. It has a catchy chorus, heavy pounding drums, and parts of the songs where like the guitars are more dominant than the other parts, and the other parts where keyboards are more dominant, and it kind of keeps things interesting. So I have one more band. The band is called Instorm. They are from Russia. The album is called Psychoviolence, and kind of hard to describe. Metal Archives lists them as neoclassical / melodic death metal. I don't really know what to call them. They're unique. It's kind of like power metal with some neoclassical, and then the guitar riffs are like those like fantasy oriented, like Lord of the Rings type of like music, like folk metal. But when you hear the vocals, it's more of a brutal like death metal style. Something like At the Gates, like that type of vocals. And they can be aggressive, but sometimes they sound like folk music and sometimes like classical music, and they change a lot about it. At times, sometimes they sound like those like Iron Maiden types when they go in those like long instrumental interludes when they kind of get really melodic and you hear like these bass sounds, and a typical like Iron Maiden like interlude. But I chose two songs. The first song, The Call, this is very different, kind of stands out. Like, it's a typical song at first, but it has a classical style intro with like a fantasy-oriented power metal riffs, and then the harsh vocals come in. I was just talking about those, and then they incorporate those like female operatic vocals, so something you would hear in a band like Nightwish or another symphonic metal band. They do some interesting things with the other instrumentation. They do that like fast tremolo picking, and the sound is just very heavy. They incorporate some like symphonic elements as well. And song number 2 is Wings for Eternity. I chose this song because it sounds like kind of like atmospheric black metal. You have like blast beats, you have heavy harsh vocals, and you have that like tremolo picking. So it sounds like very dark and evil, and it's just very fast. So the song kind of moves on. They do more like guitar shredding, just some guitar solos, and just overall heavy in general. So that is all. So please remember, next week I will be premiering my top 50 albums of 2022. They will be released Monday through Friday. They're divided into 5 videos, 10 albums each. So with 10 songs being on each video. And the top 10 will be released on Friday. So that would be my top 50 of the year. And then, but after that, in that space between like mid-December and January, I'm also still going to probably put random stuff out. So that is all. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.